In the heart of a sun-drenched suburb in Virginia, where the oak trees cast long, sprawling shadows over manicured lawns, lived two titans of the canine world. To a passerby, they might have looked like statues of ancient guardians brought to life, massive, muscular, and imposing. But to the Miller family, they were simply Barnaby, the jet-black cane corso, and Cooper, the tawny, mahogany-coated borbol. Together, they occupied nearly 300 pounds of pure muscle, yet their hearts were as soft as the velvet on their oversized ears. Barnaby was the elder of the two, a shadow that moved with a surprising, liquid grace. His coat was so dark it seemed to absorb the light of the American South, and his amber eyes held a depth of wisdom that suggested he understood the family's conversations better than they did. Cooper, younger and slightly more exuberant despite his immense frame, was a golden giant. His skin hung in heavy, handsome folds around his neck, and his tail, thick as a sapling, could clear a coffee table with a single, happy wag. Their life in America was a symphony of routine and affection. Every morning began not with an alarm clock, but with the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of Cooper's tail hitting the bedroom floor. He would wait until the first sliver of dawn crept through the blinds before resting his massive head, which weighed as much as a bowling ball, directly on Sarah Miller's chest. A few moments later, Barnaby would join, let out a long, dramatic sigh, and lean his entire body weight against the side of the bed, effectively anchoring the humans to their mattress. The Millers knew that owning such powerful breeds came with a great responsibility. In the neighborhood, some people would cross the street when they saw the Black Shadow and the Golden Mountain approaching. But the fear was always misplaced. Barnaby and Cooper were ambassadors of their breeds. They walked on loose leashes, their heavy paws hitting the pavement in unison, ignoring the yapping of frantic chihuahuas behind fences. They moved with the quiet confidence of kings who had nothing to prove. One Saturday afternoon, the family decided to take the boys to a local lake. The Ford Expedition was the only vehicle that could comfortably house them. Even then, when both dogs were loaded in, the suspension dipped visibly. As they drove through the rolling hills of the countryside, Barnaby kept his chin on the headrest, watching the world go by with stoic intensity. Cooper, meanwhile, had his nose pressed firmly against the glass, his breath fogging the window as he tracked the scent of pine and wild grass. At the lake, the scene was idyllic. The water was a sparkling blue, reflecting the vastness of the American sky. When the dogs were released into a secured, grassy clearing near the shore, they didn't run like typical dogs. They thundered. The ground actually vibrated as Barnaby chased Cooper in a game of tag that looked like a clash of prehistoric titans. When they played, they growled in deep, guttural tones that sounded like distant thunder, but their mouths were soft and their movements were careful. They knew their own strength, and more importantly, they knew each other. A small child, perhaps 5 years old, wandered near the edge of the clearing with his parents. The boy stopped, eyes wide, pointing at the two giants. "Lions," he whispered in awe. Sarah Miller smiled and beckoned them over. As the family approached, Barnaby immediately sat, lowering his head to be on the child's level. Cooper, always the charmer, flopped onto his back, exposing his massive white-patched chest for belly rubs. The boy's hands disappeared into Cooper's thick fur. In that moment, the myth of the aggressive giant vanished, replaced by the reality of two incredibly well-adjusted family members who just happened to be the size of small ponies. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of violet and burnt orange, the dogs grew quiet. They laid down in the grass, side by side, their shoulders touching. This was the bond of the two friends, a silent pact of protection and companionship. Barnaby licked a small scratch on Cooper's ear that he'd gotten from a stray bramble, and Cooper rested his chin on Barnaby's flank. They were two different breeds from two different continents, brought together in a home in the New World, sharing a life defined not by their power, but by the gentleness they chose to show. Back at home, after a dinner of high-protein kibble and a few shared bites of leftover steak, the great nap commenced. The living room was dominated by two oversized orthopedic beds, but more often than not, the dogs ended up in a heap on the rug. The sounds of their snoring filled the house, a deep, resonant bass that felt like a heartbeat for the home itself. In the quiet of the night, while the American suburbs slept, the two guardians remained vigilant even in their slumber. If a floorboard creaked or a stranger walked too close to the porch, Barnaby's eyes would snap open and a low, vibrating hum would start in his chest. Not a bark, but a warning. Cooper would shift, ready to back his brother up. They were the silent sentinels, the heavyweight champions of the household, bound by a brotherhood that transcended words. To the world, they were giants. To the Millers, they were the very soul of the family. And so they lived, day by day, two massive shadows of love under the stars of their American home. The seasons shifted in Virginia, painting the woods in deep crimsons and golds. For Barnaby and Cooper, autumn was the season of the Great Patrol. The cooling air gave the two giants a second wind, turning their summer lethargy into a focused, playful energy. On a crisp October morning, the backyard was a battlefield of fallen leaves. Cooper, the tawny bauble, had discovered a particularly large oak branch. Instead of simply chewing it, he carried it like a trophy, his massive neck muscles rippling under his mahogany skin. Barnaby, the black shadow, watched from the porch with a regal tilt of his head, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. When the moment came, it was like watching two freight trains collide in slow motion. Barnaby lunged, his dark coat blurring against the grass, and engaged Cooper in a heavyweight wrestling match. They tumbled through the leaves, a whirlwind of 300 pounds of muscle. To an outsider, the deep rumbles of their play growls might have sounded intimidating, but to the Millers, it was the sound of pure joy. They moved with a synchronized rhythm, always mindful of where the other's limbs were, a testament to a brotherhood forged over years of shared meals and side-by-side naps. As evening fell, the family gathered around a stone fire pit in the backyard. The dogs took their stations, Barnaby leaning his heavy weight against Mr. Miller's legs, while Cooper lay sprawled across the feet of the children, acting as a living, breathing heater. The flickering orange light danced across their faces, highlighting the gray fur beginning to sprout around Barnaby's muzzle. They were more than just pets. They were the anchor of the household.